What's up, guys? I hope you are doing well. I hope you and your family are doing well, should I say. I miss being in school already, and allergies are kicking my tail end right now. So, pardon me if I sound a little nasally while I'm going through this, but we will make it through it. Today, we're going to take a look at antebellum reform. I'm going to be bouncing between a couple of different PowerPoints. They will all be up on the Haiku page to try to cover today's topic, which is going to be the Second Great Awakening. All right, that's the first part of antebellum reform, or the age of reform. We'll also look at the abolitionist movement, the temperance and suffrage and public education, prison and asylum reform movement. And all of these reform movements or movements take place during the antebellum period. Antebellum just means the period before war. And we in history, we like to, break dates down into certain periods. So as you can see, we covered in the first three units, we covered the colonial period, the revolutionary period, the early national period, and now we are into this antebellum period. And the antebellum period starts in 1820 with that Missouri Compromise pushed through Congress by Henry Clay and signed into law. It is the first crisis of the Union, and it starts the ticking time bomb to civil war. And in that 1860 in the election of Abraham Lincoln. Now, the antebellum period itself, there's a lot of change happening. Right? You remember from Jacksonian democracy and the Jacksonian controversies, primarily the Jacksonian democracy, the vote is expanding. All right, the common man and the age of the common man, and I would argue at that one too, women involved in this are starting to become better educated. They're garnering more rights, and with that, they want to see the country that they live in change with it from the old system under this early national and revolutionary period of an elite group of people who are making the decisions. And so society is changing, right? That's the big thing to take from this. Now, why is society changing and why is there a second great awakening? And this is really what we're going to hammer on home today is this second great awakening, another religious revival in America taking place. And I always ask it, why? Why did we have another second great awakening? If you remember the first one, um, that took place during the colonial period. Why did we have a second one? Well, simply put, and the easiest way to try to tell you guys, the market revolution had a lot to do with, right, the bringing about of a second religious revival. And the market revolution, if you remember from Henry Clay's American system, BIT, Bank of the United States, internal improvements and protective tariffs, really what it was trying to do was make the United States economically self sufficient. And to do that, you were going to need certain things to start happening. And one of these things that started happening was a revolution in transportation, railroads, canals, and steamboats. And basically, when you have these things, people who produce goods can now ship their goods to distant markets. Right? No longer is the idea of the local town and whoever does jobs inside that local town. That's what you have. That doesn't exist anymore with this market revolution. You can now get goods from Illinois shipped here. You can now get goods from New York shipped here due to the introduction of a revolution in transportation. And so, what this did is it changed how people interacted with one another. Also, coming along with the revolution in transportation was a revolution in communication, and that was via the telegraph, which allowed for distant transactions to take place. And people started asking this question: How do I know I'm not getting taken advantage of by someone on the other end? It's one thing when you communicate with someone face to face. All right, you can see their body language. You can tell if you're getting taken advantage of. But over a telegraph, it's not like a cell phone where you hear the person's voice. You just hear the and then here comes out a typed message and it says what it says. And so how do you know that person isn't trying to get the best of you? And that led to a little bit of anxiety in some people. Right? Not to mention There was the introduction of the factory system. Right? People started working for wages instead of just working for themselves and making money for themselves. All right, which then started this whole idea and this concept of the employer versus the employee. How do I know that my boss isn't trying to take advantage of me? How do I know that my boss is looking at my best interest? And this really started to worry people as well. And then in the upper middle class, the elite people of the United States, particularly in the Northeast and in the North in general, there was this idea of the cult of domesticity, that the woman's place was in the household, right, raising the children, and that the men are to go to work. And this had stuck, like I said, primarily in the Northeast and in the North. This was the primary mode of marriage. And that was what it was supposed to be like. But we have new people coming into this country, immigrants, which you're going to see on the next slide here. We have a huge swath of immigration coming over from Ireland, from Germany, and from Scandinavia. And with them, they bring new ideas. You also have the rise of the common man and common people who don't follow these rules of the cult of domesticity. And so this is another factor that plays in to people's fear and anxiety. And so, like I said, people were just fraught with full of anxiety and fear. And how does one behave in this new economic system? And how does one know that they are not getting taken advantage of? And like I said, to also add to these two things, there is a growing population, and that's spurred on by immigration. And with new people come new ideas, and that can be a frightful proposition. And it definitely was to the people of America during this time period. Right? Not to mention, right? Let's not forget that there are the market, pardon me, the market revolutions taking place. But let's not also forget that there's social changes taking place as well too. We have ever pushing westward expansion, and with this, people are moving outside the control of the church. Okay, churches aren't being established like wildfire out in Missouri or Indiana or Illinois, and so people are leaving the control of the church. And then you also have a middle class that is starting to expand, more educated, more informed. Some people, not all, but some have extra income, which then leads to leisure time. And leisure time, otherwise known as downtime, can, according to some, can be a dangerous proposition. Another social change that comes in is the vote expands. Jacksonian democracy, the age of the common man, and rugged individualism, that you can do it yourself. So all of these things brought fear and anxiety into people's minds that their world is changing. The United States is changing. We are growing up. We are starting to become what we like to think of as a modern America. Right? And so what starts taking place is religious revivals. And the goal of it was to get people back to church. From 1795 to 1840, revivals would sweep through America, and they would use this evangelical evangelism or a zealous effort to spread Christianity. The primary area where it took place was the burned over district, which would be upstate New York, and it was going to become the epicenter of the Second Great Awakening. And I just wanted to show this map here. Let's see where it is at. Right here. I want to show this map to you guys and the burned over district. The burned over district was right here in upstate New York. And what's interesting about this is look at what's centered right in the middle of the burned over district. That is the Erie Canal, right? And the canal basically linked the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean. At this point in time in America, the primary port or seaport where goods were coming in and out of, right, was Philadelphia, right here. So somewhere right in this area right here. That was the premier seaport. New York wanted to take that title over. New York wanted to have the premier seaport at New York City into the Atlantic Ocean. And so with this Erie Canal, right, you could have now a connection between the states of Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, what is soon to be, right, Michigan and Wisconsin, right, that are all connected to these Great Lakes, and you can sail through the Great Lakes, hit the Erie Canal, shoot across, hit the Hudson River, and jut down to New York City. And so this canal was built. And while goods are being shipped back and forth, right, from the Atlantic to the Great Lakes and from the Great Lakes to the Atlantic, not only were the goods being shipped, but guys' ideas were being shipped as well too. People met new people that they would have never met before if it wouldn't have been for this market revolution and a revolution in transportation. And so this is why this area right here in upstate New York became known as the burned over district. It was primarily because goods were being shipped, and not only were goods being shipped, but ideas were being shipped as well too. And I'll keep this map up because I'm gonna come back to it. But where did the Second Great Awakening take place? Well, the start of it was in 1795 at the Yale College Revival, led by Timothy Dwight, who wanted to have conversion through conversation. He wanted to make sure people were having a head knowledge of the Bible and that they were talking this through. All right. Then in 1801, the first camp meetings start popping up in Cane Ridge, Kentucky, out in that western frontier. At Cane Ridge, they had 50,000 participants, and that's very different from Timothy Dwight's Yale's conversion through conversation. At these camp meetings, you had frenzied participation. As one parishioner put it, it was the struggling in the thrones of damnation. Basically put, they exercised for their salvation. People were falling, laughing, jerking, barking, jumping, going crazy. If I could take you back in time to Cane Ridge, Kentucky, and we were to view this, you would all probably be like, what the heck is going on? It was that crazy. And so people were just immense frenzy of participation in this revival. And each of these things carried the seeds for further revivals. And two of the most famous people of the Second Great Awakening is Lyman Beecher and Charles G. Finney. All right, Lyman Beecher, you will hear that name pop up again, the Beecher part of that, because his daughter is Harriet Beecher Stowe, who will write Uncle Tom's Cabin. Okay? Now, both of these men believed in conversion and menialism. Right? And menialism is just basically the intimate return or the imminent return of Christ and a 1,000-year set of peace. And they both had the faith in the human agency that people have the ability to bring about conversion. They shouldn't just wait on it. And this is a rejection of predestination and of that first great awakening. Right? The first great awakening was all on Calvinist theory. And that Calvinist theory is predestination. That God, when you are born, that God has chosen your route for you. Right? And that there's really nothing you can do about it. You are either going or you aren't going to heaven. It's really simplistic. It's just as easy as that. These two men in the Second Great Awakening rejected that idea. They rejected the idea of predestination. They believe that humans have the ability to change and change themselves via reform. And so they should do that. Right? And they believed in the voluntary association and benevolent empire. The benevolent empire simply means the kind empire. All right. Beecher helps dozens on evangelical societies, and we will talk about that in coming days. The benevolent empire was going to consist of a profound conservative attitudes. They wanted to free the slaves, they wanted to get rid of the drunkards, and they feared immigrants. And the goal of this was to teach the values to the democratic masses. That even you, despite you might be the worst sinner of them all, and you might be 32 years old, if you would go to the Calvinist doctrine and theory of predestination, even if you're a 32-year-old man or woman, you're lost. There's no way of saving you. They didn't believe in that. They believed even if you were 32, man or woman, and you were full of sin throughout your life, you still could be saved. All right. And so basically, the Second Great Awakening had a very big, profound impact on all of this. And this is the benevolent empire that I was meaning in that other screen, right? So the Second Great Awakening starts, and it's spiritual reform from within, or religious revivalism. And basically, because of this, this brings about social reform and redefining the ideal of equality. And so, because the Second Great Awakening takes place, because it is a revival for the common man, and they want every common person to be a part of it and have a religious conversion. And it included women, and it included youth. It wasn't just set for men and men alone. It included all groups of people. And so, therefore, it has a ton of offshoots that come off of it. The temperance movement has started. The asylum and penal reform movement has started. The abolitionist movement has started. And the women's rights movement has started. The education movement has started. All of these movements and the other ones that we will talk about in these coming days, right, are all started because of this, the Second Great Awakening, a religious revival that is brought about, that is for the common man. Now, I put together a few years ago, I had students of mine put together a wordly, and they read the speech between Jonathan Edwards, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, and then Charles G. Finney's sermon, right, between the two of them. And you can kind of see this, and this kind of will shed light into this Second Great Awakening. All right, so in Jonathan Edwards, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, from the First Great Awakening, these students look at the big words that pop up here: God, wrath, hell, right? God's wrath, hand, power, right? We're these big serious words like God, wrath, and hell are the big ones that are popping up there, that God was angry at people and that you need to fix your ways. Now, he didn't say that you were going to heaven if you changed your ways. Basically put, he said that your life is being hung over the fire pits of hell by a spider string, right? And at any point in time, God could let you go and he's not going to save you. So you need to change, right? Not that you're going to get into heaven if you change, but you need to change. Whereas if you look at Charles G. Finney's sermon, right, there is nothing about wrath. I mean, there is one of the students, a couple of the students put damnation right there, but God, all right, salvation, right, reprobate, basically just meaning that anybody, right, even no matter if you were a sinner, for most of your life. You can be saved. And so it's a much more positive and uplifting reform movement that is taking place as well. And also with this, just to get a little bit more, but there were some new denominations that came about because of the Second Great Awakening. The first of these are the Millerites, who we simply know today as the Seventh day Adventist. Another group, all right, that comes out of the Second Great Awakening are the Mormons, founded in 1827 by Joseph Smith, and they'll later be taken over by Brigham Young. All right, and then another thing that the Second Great Awakening does for us is it gives the rise in African American churches. All right. As a quote says, that the Second Great Awakening has been called the central and defining event in the development of Afro Christianity, right? And that we see the creation of AME and AMZ churches that start popping up all over. And so to this day, they are AME and AMZ churches. Well, here is where they are started, right? And so the Second Great Awakening was really just a very important movement that started during the age of Jackson, right? That really was for the common man and for the common person, right? And so it will lead to the offshoots of all of these, right? And the thing that I really want you to keep hold of is that because of the market revolution, because of the societal changes that are taking place, people are afraid, they're anxious, they're scared, and they are looking for something consistent. And the one consistent thing in anybody's life is God, right? And so that's why this new revival takes place. It is going to show that the common man can carry this on, that this is not just for the rich and the elite, that the common man can really take this on themselves. And they are going to change what they think is wrong with society, and it will lead to all these movements that we're going to talk about in the coming days. Again, I hope you guys are doing well, and I look forward to seeing you back in class whenever the heck that may be. Until then, if you have any questions or concerns, just shoot me an email, and I'll talk to y'all later.